Hello, everybody. Dave Finale here. We are live here for Real Estate Talk TGIF. That is, thank God it's finale, not thank God it's Friday, but it's Friday, so it works. And this is episode 46. Yep, 46 weeks in a row. And I want to thank everybody for attending to the change, whether you watch this now or you watch it later. This is episode 46. We're doing a little bit later today on Friday. And we have with us none other than a great human being, a real estate agent, a real estate broker owner, an author, and an overall great guy, and someone I like to call a mindset genius, Ryan Hodge from the realty firm in London, Ontario, Canada, correct?
That's correct. Honored to be here, my man.
Great. Thanks for coming on. So Ryan, let's get right into it. Tell us your story about why you got into real estate and how your first couple of years were, because they seem to be the toughest for a lot of real estate agents. I want to talk about yours a bit.
Sure. So I grew up, born and raised, again, London, Ontario, Canada. I went to high school here and university here, took a degree in sociology and psychology with an emphasis on human behavior. I worked in the corporate sales world for 10 years. So we were in a jewelry manufacturing industry, business to business sales, and high school and college and championship rings, things like that. And I'd kind of, reached a level in that business that had pretty much come to an end in terms of growth. I could only go so far in it. And, I had one little guy. I've got three boys who are now 13, 11, and 7, but I had one little guy that was 2 years old, or coming up on 2 and 1, coming down the pipeline anyways. And I just said, I've got to get into something different. I wasn't satisfied with where I was. So after a little bit of soul searching and, some recommendations, looking around at, some of the people that I knew that had some success in real estate, I decided to jump in. And yeah, it was fantastic. I had a really unique start where I did sell over 100 homes in my first full year, which was 2009.
Your first year in business, in 2009 of all years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So our market was, relatively balanced at that time. But it's just a story. I think that anybody can do whatever they want in this business if they are consistently, discovering more about themselves and about what this business lends to them as far as opportunity goes.
Right.
But for me, it was full throttle. I did the 100+ deals in my first year. Started a small team, which then became a large team. Some ups and downs, different hybrids of teams along the way in that regard. And after 5 years with my brokerage, decided to do my own.
So let's just take a step back from those 5 years and let's look at your first year. I mean, I've had on in early January, I have a gentleman by the name of Oscar Nunez on. He's 21, 22 years old. Did $7 million in 2018, but he was finishing his last year of college.
Wow.
People were interested to see what he did. And by the way, in January, the first week in January, he had $4 million pending at the time as well. So he had put together $11 million worth of business.
Sure.
So when we think about that, we think, holy cow, that's a lot of business. But that was only about, for him, I think that was only about 20 transactions. I say only, I'm sorry, but only. But you said 100. Did I hear you right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How did you do those 100 transactions? What was your lead generator? What was your conversion aspect and acquiring customers? What were the three things that you did there? Generating, conversion, acquisition.
So the first thing that I did was I got very clear that I was going to need to look outside of my market to get support and information, which, years later I still do. And I still continue to go not only outside of my market, but outside of the industry to achieve results in the various places and spaces that I like to, take part in. But to break it down, and it's a common question, 34 of those transactions came through free organic Facebook strategies. Okay, 34. 27 through my circle or sphere of influence. So that was my database. 22 through online lead generation. So I created, with the help of a good friend of mine, some website funnels, landing pages, lead capture. Started running targeted ads on Google. So 22 came from there. I started a small geographical farm, which led to, I believe, 14 transactions. And then the rest was the traditional stuff, door knocking, cold calling, open houses, FISBOs. It was kind of an all-encompassing and just testing and measuring, what worked and just trying to advance my skill sets throughout.
So what was your attitude when you decided to get into real estate and move forward and really make it happen for you? I mean, look, and the reason I asked the question is that there's a lot of people that get into this business, and we were talking about this before, that, they want to get in to see if it's right for them and they want to try it and move forward on it. But to do what you did, I mean, it took a different attitude and mindset, so to speak, which we'll get into in a little while, but it took a different attitude, no?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the attitude that I had at the time was probably not the one that was the most self-serving, as I would call it, because it was very, very much validation-based. So I had a lot of people that would doubt, what I was going to do inside of real estate, including some family, based on my upbringing and kind of growing up on, the other side of the tracks, wanted to prove a point. And ultimately, it was much like many things in my life, validation from others. So, when you come to understand that validation really only lies within, you can shift your perspective and the means and ways that you take action. But at that time, that's what it was. It was a look at me. I'm going to be number one this, number one that. I'm going to prove people wrong. And, that, of course, leads to some other experiences that aren't the healthiest.
I get that, and I've seen exactly what you're talking about, but it's very rare to see someone do 20, let alone 100 or more transactions in a year. I believe that takes the drive. I mean, you had the drive of validation for a lot of reasons, I imagine. So then you moved into the part of broker and owning your own company. Tell us about that transition, going from agent to broker owner.
Sure. So, still an agent, right? When we started the company, I originally started with another fellow that I had teamed up on some sales with. And ultimately what we looked at was what could our market use? Because although we had a great relationship with our previous broker, we just weren't seeing the value, and great guy, had a great relationship with him. And I think that, most of the people in my market, and like most markets, are good people. But let's face it, the real estate brokerage model is a very complacent model. And no offense to anyone, but it's a much older demographic, which trains on old school theory. And oftentimes doesn't apply proven and applicable strategy to specific markets. And so for ourselves, we thought that, London, Ontario, Canada, little London, Ontario, Canada could use something different, turnkey, business strategies and systems, applying, digital marketing, social media, teaching people to, actually create a business plan, but not just look at it as something to put on a wall, but to actually look at what is absolutely required to achieve a result that someone desires and frankly they deserve if they're getting into this business. And we had a great start. We took off, I think by 6 months in a market of 1,300 agents at the time, or 1,500 agents at the time. We had about 30 people that had joined the organization. In 5 years, I've recruited over 100, I think over 150, and had some real growing pains along the way as far as, some of those open loops or, gaps that were missing that, allowed some agents to leave that, we really didn't want to see leave. But, in the last year in particular, since I became the sole owner, I've laid just a phenomenal, with the help of some other people in the organization, but a phenomenal foundation that is built around really what the three pillars are, is, training, leadership, and culture.
Right. So you talked about, you mentioned the ideal or the idea, whichever way you want to look at it, of business models in our business. And there's, like, for instance, there's the old business model, which is, split and referral fee on leads and all that stuff. And it still exists today.
Sure.
with the new models of, Remax, which was the disruptor, let's say, back in the 90s, I guess, even though it was around a little longer than that. And then now with Keller Williams growing to the largest company in the world. And then you've got EXP with all the different models, but you've got the old business model. So talk a little bit about what model you chose and why. Was that one of the differences in the market that London needed, you said?
No, I mean, I think that when it comes down to fees, we've got a good friend and, somebody that I admire that has epic history in the recruiting space, which is John Chetlak. And he always says that, the people that come for a lower fee structure will leave for the same reason.
Right.
Right. It's not about the fees. It's about what value are you going to provide as far as an experience goes. And, I've got no negative charge to any model that's out there if you've got the right leader or a leadership model in place that can allow people to have that experience, whether it is, cloud-based or whether it is traditional. It comes down to what is going to support the growth of another human being at the highest level, because that's the responsibility we take as a broker owner or manager in terms of what experience are we going to provide.
I understand, but I've got to ask this question because it comes up all the time with me, with agents and stuff. But sometimes okay, so there's leadership, right? Culture, the whole thing. But there's a lot of people that tell me that it's all about the money. Who's going to give them the best deal, right? And I 100% agree with what John Chetlak has taught us and always said, if they come for the money, they leave for the money. And ultimately, that is so true, right? But when you've got the majority of the agent base talking about the money, I guess you have to stand firm. Would that be correct in assuming?
Yeah, that's an immediate no for me, man. I don't mean to come off harsh here, but it's an immediate goodbye. Because I've been down that road where, every time that a new member comes on, I would have a kind of an exploration interview with, somebody, that's another leader in the office. And
right.
It's either a definite yes, a definite no, or a maybe. Almost all of those maybes are usually based around somebody that seems like a pretty decent agent. Maybe our personalities conflict a little bit, but they're usually more often than not all about the money. And any time that I have allowed or, welcomed somebody into the organization based on that, it never works out. It's either a conflict, it's a toxic energy, it's somebody that, comes in and says, I don't give a shit about your training, your fees, your staff, your training, your culture, or your staff. I just want to know about the money. It's a goodbye. There are many other options that will welcome you.
Well, I'm not, I asked the question because, let's face it, everybody wants to make as much money as they can, right? I firmly believe what you do is that, you want to come and work with me just because of the money or because of the price. There's really no match there because you're going to be one way or the other disappointed later on, which means either you're going to be disappointed and not want to do the work or you're going to leave. And what good is that for either of us, right? So it goes through a lot of different things. So we talked a little bit about moving into the brokers. And what do you see as being a broker owner and owning your own company? What do you see as, aside from the mindset of the agent coming in, what do you see? Is it leadership? Is it serving? What is it that is the most important asset that a brokerage can have?
It's an understanding about, agents come in for, a variety of reasons. I believe it is not trying to adhere to what everybody else is doing, but to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are and really focusing in on those strengths. So what I would safely say is that in my market, nobody can even touch me on the training level. Okay.
Right.
So, and I would say that in most markets, but that's just me. When we look at that training element of things, though, what we have to remember is that every agent's different. So not every agent wants to sell 100 homes in their first year like I did. Not some people don't want to sell 20 a year.
Right.
Okay? Hopefully they do, because if you're 2 deals a month, that's, pretty
Right.
decent amount of business for most.
Right.
But when you look at that and you explore why agents leave, it's often not always just about the leader and what they're transferring. You want to provide an experience where they can take the pieces that resonate for them and make it their own. And so when I looked at, laying a new foundation and basically rebuilding a company with some really good people, but rebuilding that foundation for them after I bought it outright, it was, not everybody wants to hear me speak as good as I think that I am. Not everybody wants to hear from me. So it was about, really putting in place multiple different streams of training, whether it's my monthly masterminds, whether it's, me doing, breakout sessions on, how I was that productive when I was strictly selling. Right now I've got a 12-week accountability group coaching going on inside of the company, which I could never do before. It just wasn't really embraced in terms of, what the foundation of the organization was. And so when you get 15 people once a week that are, dumping, it all on the table as far as, what's really getting in the way of me, selling more real estate or being the human being that I want to be, and getting real transparent, authentic, and accountable, well, you've got something different than what almost anyone would offer. The very, very few will go down that road with their agents. And I'm not saying that's the right one, but it works for us, works for our people. And we, seem to keep growing. So I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, I can totally agree that the backbone of what you're doing is on the training piece. You basically, and I have your stuff. I've used your stuff. I've gone through your stuff with you. We've spent time together working on your stuff together. So I'm well aware of what it is and how it works. You actually, your training is basically everything that has made you the agent that you are or were and will be, as far as that first year and what you've continued to do that with the organic marketing, which is something that I have completely gone into. Spending money on Facebook ads is great if you know what you're doing. There's a lot of people that do it that don't know what you're doing. There's a lot of people charging people to do it that don't know what they're doing. But the organic stuff, doing it consistently and staying true to it, will always work. Would you agree with that?
Sure. I think, I think that anything works, but I think it's a real understanding that, number one, real estate is a contact sport. Okay. You will hear people all over the map say, don't buy leads. Okay. Well, you're either buying a lead with your money or you're buying a lead with your time. Okay. You're giving an exchange of one thing or the other. So if you don't want to spend money to acquire leads, then you're going to be spending time, because whether it's a referral or your best friend or your grandparents, they are still a lead. It's part of lead generation, or what I refer to as business cultivation. And so when we look at, how do I want to responsibly attract more people into my environment, organic Facebook is a great place to start. Because like we know, most people don't want to do business with us until they like and trust us.
Right.
Okay. So creating that, element of content to show who we are, what we're about, before we try and hard sell them on anything, especially our sphere or the people that have the opportunity to buy, sell, or refer us a real estate transaction, including out-of-town agents for those types of referrals. Developing that like and trust and showing who we are beyond the transactional aspect of us is crucial. But ultimately, it is still about consistently making contact with people, and what an easy and free way to do it through organic messaging, sending systematic messages that don't sell.
Absolutely. Look, we can use, as we heard, if you watched the show last week with Mike Pruitt, and what John has said is, there's those cheesy dialogues. You don't need to do that. You can just be nice and just work towards, having conversations and saying hello to people and all that other stuff. And also, being what you're doing your job as a real estate agent, and which is more than just, hand holding and transactions and everything else. It's being through and building relationships and everything else to get people to understand that you're that good. So when we talk about what you did your first year, moved into broker ownership, and now you're a solo owner of your company. And we talk about organic marketing and everything else. And I asked you this question earlier, and now I want to transition into mindset. We talked about attitude.
Yep.
Now we want to talk about mindset. And I said in the promos that you're an author, and your book is called The Integrity Vow. So let's talk about mindset and your book, and how that all works together, and what it's meant to you to have this. I mean, you have this like laser focused mindset. So talk about that.
Well, not always, right? I mean, we all revert to form, or go back and forth a little bit. I learned from people that I admire and inspire me. I learned a long time ago that it's not about me getting motivation or motivated from somebody else. Other people on their paths, certainly inspire me, but I've got to motivate myself within. But ultimately, when you look at, and I'll try and break it down as best I can for, my perspective with your audience. Real estate is, it's a breeding ground for mediocrity, right? The average agent across any market sells 5.5 homes a year. That's just fact, right? Mm-hmm. And so why is that? Well, we can look at a number of different things for what the real reason is, but there's typically two reasons why an agent fails. Either they're lazy or they are scared. And so most of the people that are coming on here aren't lazy because they've showed up, right?
Right.
And ultimately, there's usually elements of fear, whether it's fear of failure or fear of success, right? The duality in that.
Sure.
And so what I truly believe, and this is in my deepest truth, is that, how can we become the most highly productive real estate agents that we want to be, whatever our goals or aspirations.
It is, right.
If we have not gotten very crystal clear on, how do I serve myself at a high level in order to serve my clients, friends, family, or beyond, right? And so when you look at that fear element, well, let's take it down to a traditional prospecting sense. Most people, of course, are fearful of making a cold call or door knocking. They don't want to be the cheesy salesperson, right?
Yes.
But ultimately, we know that works. I mean, it's empirical research data that you can reverse engineer a certain amount of contacts to get a transaction. And if you can study and analyze that amount of contacts or that amount of private messaging, which still requires contact, okay, even if we're reaching out to the people. But again, most agents are fearful that they're going to come off sounding like a salesperson or that they're going to be bothering somebody. And ultimately, that really reverts back to, where am I lacking self-confidence that I need to remind people that I'm in the business and that I'm open for business? And hey, cheesy sales dialogues, this thing is still the best way that I would drop into any market on the planet and sell 100 homes. Okay, I know that I can do it. I would do it through online leads, which I would buy. That would be a big part of my business. I would send messages, but here's the ticket. Many of the people that are talking about don't buy leads, don't use scripts, don't convert, are people that either A, are not in the business and they're trying to distract real estate agents with information because it sells them, or B, they've already done it and yeah, they can talk about their wonderful sphere or platforms or Facebook ads or whatever that is, but that doesn't necessarily help a new agent in a new market that doesn't have that long list of past clients that they can really market to. And so we need to look at the different pillars of contact that we need to make. Mm-hmm. But if you're in an environment or a marketplace that allows you to systematically prospect through Facebook Messenger, great place to start because it's the easiest. However, the mindset still always comes back to, I'm scared that I'm going to bother somebody. I'm scared that I'm going to come off as a cheesy salesperson, and I'm scared to make that contact. So it doesn't work. Well, let's go backwards and really, really self-discover where that fear originated in the first place, get very, very clean and clear on it, and then move forward into the progress that we want, that we ultimately know will get us the results in any of the areas, spaces, or places that we want to play in.
You know what? It's very interesting. You say you went through that whole thing of fear of success, fear of failure, and the thing with Facebook Messenger and stuff. And I believe there's two reasons why Now I've lost my train of thought. I apologize for that. There's two reasons why it does work and it should be done. It's just the same thing as making a call, in my opinion. The same thing as if you're going to use the phone calling for sale by owners or expireds. Here's the thing. First of all, they don't know you for the most part, right? If you're doing that, it's a great way to practice. So that's something aside. But what's the worst that could happen is that they ghost you and don't respond. Or two, they say, leave me alone. I mean, okay, right? I mean, all right, it's the same as cold calls. I mean, you know what? All they do is say no. Do they know you? Well, you know, if you're working with your sphere on Facebook Messenger, yeah, okay, fine. But that's why I said before is you're not talking about the business all the time. You're talking about building a relationship and having a conversation, right? So you're not, so with the stuff that you're talking about, Ryan, you're not talking about, you know, hey, I want to tell you about the market and there's new houses on the market. You're talking about conversational stuff. It's spring, it's summer, you know, saw Johnny just hit a home run in the local game, right?
Well, and here's how it went for me. So originally I had a list of about, and I didn't even like Facebook at the time. I had a list of about 1,000 people on my Facebook. Okay. And most of them were, you know, friends, colleagues, out of town agents, things like that. And I just added them. And they all had what I would say is an opportunity to buy, sell, or refer me a deal. Right. So I systematically just sent an initial message. Hey there, how's it going? It's been a little while. Just got into a new business with a new company, and I'd like to send you some information. And so in that 1,000 people, I only really had a response from about 30%. So 300 people actually responded.
Right.
Out of that 300, though, 100 of them only gave me the information that I requested, your email address, phone number, and mailing address for those that I didn't have it. But that 100 people became an absolute gold mine of a database because I could put them on drip email. I could send them, you know, notes or newsletters, calls, you know, little touches, you know, if I was in the area, things like that.
Right.
And that's how it starts to snowball. But if you look at, you know, the typical real estate agent or leader for that matter, I don't want to send a message to this person because I'm going to bother them. Well, the mindset's already, you know, of a complete lack or scarcity because they're not confident in themselves that they can't even have a conversation with somebody that doesn't necessarily need to be about real estate. But we know that just like offline, whether you're in a grocery store or at a party or whatever, online, the conversation will often go to how's the market, what's new with real estate. And that then lends itself to the opportunity to, you know, develop a client acquisition or, you know, enhance that referral relationship.
Exactly. And these are the points that I bring out. Like I've got a program coming out, as you know, that talks all about client acquisition. And we get to all of that through organic marketing. I believe one of the things you want to do is acquire clients. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that you're talking about generating leads. It doesn't mean that you're converting leads. It means that you're doing things to acquire people that will, if they don't now, will eventually know, like, and trust you for what you're doing online and how you're communicating with them.
Yep.
And that will be your base, your gold mine, to use your words, how you were able to do that. And you'll continually be able to build a business, or shall I say, sustain a business by doing all of that work. But it looks just like anything else, Brian. You know, it requires a commitment. I mean, you can have all the goals in the world. If you don't have a commitment with action plans behind it, it's garbage. I mean, you know, what's a goal? It's an idea, right? It's just an idea. Talk about, we're running up against time, but I wanted to really ask you about your book, The Integrity Vow.
Sure.
Talk to me about that. Tell us what it's about. And there it is, The Integrity Vow. Tell us about how you came about writing it and what it's all about.
Sure. So The Integrity Vow, Engaging Your Authentic Self, was a book that I wrote based on a lot of the experiences that I was having or have had or created, along with responsibly, you know, not naming names, a number of my one-on-one coaching clients. So it is a book that, you know, really allows people to self-discover in a place of personal, or what I reference as spiritual development, personal development and spiritual development.
Right.
And it's really based on a lot of my life, you know, and a lot of the lives of people that I've been blessed and honored to work with in terms of, we can have ultimate levels of success. But like Cheplak says, success is just a toxic mimic, or I call it a toxic replacement, for something different. And ultimately, we all get to define what it is for us. But oftentimes what we feel is success, or a perceived level of success, is just a mask for something else. And we're not actually creating the experiences that we create. And so with my, one-on-one coaching clients, obviously it's, a little bit different. A lot of people come in for real estate, but more often than not, they are, creating experiences that aren't serving them, whether it's, challenges with addiction or workaholism or infidelity or relationship issues, lack of self-worth, all the wonderful things that, I've been fortunate to create in my own world. And it's more of a value transference. It's taking some specific, universal laws or, elements of, what's going to allow us to understand ourselves at a deep-rooted level, right, and apply it to different areas of life. And sometimes it's just about getting somebody unstuck. If they make the right choice and follow the process, they can get unstuck, or they can simply move into a greater understanding of the self and move forward with some progress. Because that is all it is just a little bit of progress each and every day.
Okay, so let me ask you a couple of quick questions with some quick answers. You're a new agent or you're a part-time agent in the business. What are the several things that they need to do without fail?
Number one, they want to understand where they are at current space and time and where they want to go. If there's no clear vision of it, you're usually just going to, operate in karma, circular, right? What goes around comes around. Number two, identifying very quickly, what their strengths and weaknesses are. It's not about the transaction. You can learn that. You can get mentors for that. But if you, start doing something that somebody tells you to do, such as lead generation by cold calling, but it doesn't feel good to you, you're eventually going to stop.
Right.
It's about finding, very quickly, and you can look around in any market or on Google and YouTube and find agents that have a business that appear to feel good to them or to you or to I, right? So if I can look at, hey, there's a guy in, New Jersey that's, operating at a higher level than me that I'd like to ascend to, and he's doing most of his business through online lead generation. I'm going to learn and study and emulate what that person is doing rather than trying to create it on my own or reinvent the wheel. Because ultimately there's only a number of ways to generate business in real estate, right? And they're tried, tested, and proven again. Yeah, there's people that'll teach it a little bit differently or tweak it, but understand that this is a contact sport. There are many, many different forms of marketing which can be complementary. And I refer to those as, certain forms of Facebook ads or bus benches or billboards or things like that. But it's the contact, whether it's, being an amazing person and working your sphere of influence, whether it's doing, my Facebook funnel or your organic Facebook strategies, whether it's determining how many leads you want to acquire as part of your client acquisition plan through online leads, or it's the prospecting stuff, open houses, door knocking, or cold calling. Understand that a certain level of contact must be made on a daily basis, 5 days a week, and move forward, because that's where you can test and measure what's working. If it's just out pie in the sky theory, you can never track and measure it, which means that ultimately, depending on what your long-term goal is, you can never grow and scale.
Absolutely. Okay, that's great information, great advice. Okay, so tell me, the last question I have for you is, what's the important flow of mindset or attitude that one needs in order to achieve the certain level of success or the goals and commitments that they put forth? What should there be there in their mind? Is there something you can say real quick or no?
Sure. What decision do I need to make next to move forward?
That's the question.
That's it.
See that? As I said, you're a mindset genius. That's what I told everybody, right? When I was doing.
I don't know about a genius, man. We're all, as I said, collective. We're all in this together, bro.
Yes, we are. Look, this has been really good. I want everybody to know that Ryan, how can people find you? You have your own coaching program and stuff. So in your business in Canada, tell people how they can find you. We can also put it in the comments as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hit me up on Facebook anytime. I've got platforms all over there. My coaching website and speaking website is www.ryanhodge.com. So ryanhodge.com. The book, which is again the Integrity Vow, www.theintegrityvow.com, and I also did a workbook as well. So there's a 12-week process that people can follow along with if they want, and that is all online. You can order online, and it ships all around the world now.
That's amazing. That's great, and I want to tell everybody that Ryan and I have known each other for a few years, but I had trouble getting Ryan on. And when Ryan found out that he got one of these hats for coming on, he called me to be on the show. I didn't have to call him; he called me. So Ryan, you get as every good game show is, you get a party gift, and that's one of these hats. We'll send that out to you. But
well, I need it, man. I mean, it's coming up to summertime here in Canada, and this head gets a little burnt if I'm not careful. So.
You need to be careful, man. I mean, look, I want you around for a long time. I need you to forever, right? So, I just want everybody to know that Ryan comes on and did a great job. Thank you, Ryan. I want everybody to know about my own stuff is realestateskillbuilder.com. That's the site. If you're interested in talking to me about working in my new programs that are coming up and are always going on and always are always recycling, that would be arteskillbuilder.com. And you can always find me everywhere on Facebook. And Ryan, thanks again. I really appreciate your time. Please stay on for a minute. Look, hope to see you real soon rather than just on video, in person. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Honored. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys.